Hi! So I am here looking a little different today. I am on day 3 of this quilt Sewalong, and I really rushed myself with the last quilt review video, so I'm not doing that this time. I'm taking a little bit more time, not doing it all in one shot, so I do look a little different each time, right? And like I said before, this is a really great quilt for a beginner quilter to work on. The Improv is great, the straight lines are very easy, and the SASHING comes together very quickly. You will see right here, I've got 120 Improv blocks right here behind me. They're in the ombre design, and they all have this vertical sashing already in there. You can see that my concern with the sashing fabric is actually working out just fine. I'm liking the way it looks. It looks way more earthy than I had expected, and I love it. It looks great. It's giving me, like I said, those Pocahontas vibes, and I really like it. Today we are going to finish this quilt, and we are going to add the horizontal sashing. And so I've got all my materials here on my desk. I no longer need to trim any fabric, so I'm going to put this away. I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but what I used to cut the Stratus blocks was this Omni Grip ruler. It's a 5.5 inch ruler, and it was very handy, very helpful. You can use other rulers, of course, but I used this one for this quilt, and I liked looking at it at a glance, and I was able to know if I had enough on the block to cut another square. So this was great. And I'm putting away my mini iron and my mini ironing board, because we are getting to the big part of the sewing where I need this big ironing board, and as my girls would call it, the mommy iron. This is the baby iron. And so I'm putting these away because I no longer need them. And I've got my other tools. I'm just gonna set these down. And I've got my other tools here. I will be using scissors this time to trim fabric as I sew it on. I've got these Fiskars scissors, and I just bought these. My last ones were ruined. Someone had used them for cutting paper and cardstock. They were not cutting fabric anymore. So these have that nice sharp sound that I love. And I do have these in my Amazon storefront. I like these because they're angled, a little easier to use. I don't have to twist my wrist so much. So I'm gonna be using these. My seam ripper, I always have this. This is a generic one. I don't know what brand made it, but I like it. It's simple. And I've got my warm crochet little snips here for the threads. I've got my pins. I always have these next to me in my magnetic bowl. And I've got a big pile right here of all the sashing. And the pattern does ask for the sashing to be 2 inches wide, which I did, but I did not cut it down to size. And I did that on purpose because whenever I am sewing a long piece of fabric onto a section of the quilt top, I like to leave them as long as possible and not trim them down. So while the pattern does ask to trim them down to the appropriate size, I left the length as is. This is all one long strip, and I'll show you why. It's just way easier for me, and I don't have to worry about fabric shifting. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna show you how I put together a couple of these rows, and then I will do the rest quickly so we can get through it very fast. All right, so I've got this bottom one here, and like I said, I don't like trimming down all of my sashing, but now I can't find the end. Now I can't find the end, so here it is. Okay, so I like to leave it all in one piece, because whenever I trim it down, usually the fabric shifts whenever I'm sewing, and that is very frustrating. I do not want to get to the end of my piece and realize that the sewing machine has shifted it slightly and it's a little bit off, and I have to add fabric, or I have to take it all out and realign it. So what I like to do is I like to just put it all there together, or leave it all there together, and then at the end, whenever I've sewn on this strip, then I can just trim it to size, and it makes it so much easier. There's no frustration. It's just all done. So I'm gonna do that here, and I'm actually gonna start on this side. No pinning necessary. because it's all one strip, and I'm gonna feed the single strip into the machine bottom first. And this is so much easier for me. You don't know how many times I've cut my fabric to exact size and then I get to the end and it's short because of the shifting during the sewing process. And that is, it makes me so mad. I have to dig into my scrap pile or take the whole thing out. It's just no fun. And I'm sure you've done the same because that's just part of fabric. It does shift. All right, so I got this here. I am back stitching every start so I don't have it coming undone at the end. And of course you can trim down your sashing pieces. It's just my preference not to. And that's just me. Everyone's got their own style. All right. So since I didn't pin this down, I do have to be careful that I keep the seams in the right space. If you're sewing one of these Stratus quilts, I'm sure you're enjoying the process. It's been a lot of fun for me, and you know what? This is one of the fastest quilt tops I've had come together. I know it may not seem that way on video. It looks like, 3 days of sewing. Yeah, it takes a lot longer to do most quilt tops. So this is coming together just fine. I'm sure that if you're working on it a couple hours a day for 1 week, it would be done very quickly. I'm really excited to have this done in my living room. I love the colors. They're so warm. And like I said, earthy. I think that's the perfect description for these fabric colors all paired together. So whenever I was posting my last video on the Patchy Pumpkin Farm quilt review, I was uploading it and my husband was like, that is way too long. The video came out to over an hour. And he was like, no one's gonna watch that. People don't like videos that long. So I cut it down, I put it into a couple parts. And then I went to look at other people's YouTube channels just to see how long do they leave their videos. Well, there are videos on there for an hour and a half. And I was like, see, I know my community. Quilting is one of those things that just takes time. And even whenever you can condense it down to a viewable video, it's still gonna take a lot of time. There are hours that go into each project. So I was like, see, honey, I know my community. I know what I'm doing here. All right, so I've got all one strip and it's still attached here. I'm gonna go ahead and trim this with a little bit of excess so that whenever I'm assembling the whole quilt, there will be little bits hanging off the edge. And that is just fine with me. I would rather have a little bit of excess sashing than to have it running short or have the quilt be crooked because I was trying to make some of the ends meet. So this is how it's gonna look, and that is just fine with me. I like having this long one piece of sashing because I can ensure that there's gonna be no mistakes here. So you can see both of the ends are a little bit longer, and that's great. But you can see here, I've got one row and that looks really good. So that fabric is actually working out quite nice here. All right, so with the next row, I would add the sashing piece on top, right above it, but I'm gonna show you how I would piece these together. And you can do 2 by 2 because once you sew 2 rows, then you're gonna be able to go through the quilt much faster. And so you just kind of pair them up. And then I like to do 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then these 2. And then I like to start piecing it together from the center out because I feel like that helps it keep straight a little better. That's just me. And you can do it in whatever order you feel most comfortable with. This is the easy part of the quilt, the one that doesn't require too many rules because it's almost done. So I've got this one here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pair these up. And since this is longer, the sashing piece is longer, I am not worried about pairing up the next row with the sashing. I am going to pair up the row with the other one beneath it and make sure that those are lined up. So I always come out with a very, very straight quilt on the edges because I'm lining up the blocks, not the sashing. And at the end, whenever this is all pieced together and it's all pressed open, I would just run my ruler. I've got this really long ruler. Run my ruler along the edges of the blocks and then trim it up, and it's perfect. None of it's too short. It just works out great. And that's the reason that I like to add my sashing this way. Here, I just finished doing the horizontal sashing here on the quilt. You can see it right here behind me, and it's looking really good. I like that it's got more of a vintage vibe to it. The sashing is definitely darker than I had expected. It's not really what I had planned, but I'm liking the way it's going. There was a very real chance that I was going to pick apart the vertical sashing whenever I first added it, and I'm glad I didn't because I do like the direction this has gone in. So you can see right here, I have all of the horizontal sashing in, but all the pieces are still not put together. So I have 6 sections, each by 2, going all the way down since there are 12 rows going from top to bottom. And I'm gonna start piecing those together. And like I said earlier, I am gonna start here in the middle. I'm gonna put these 2 long strips together. And I am, with this section, I'm gonna go ahead and do more pins than I did before. Because now it really matters. Well, you have to go with what you feel comfortable with. I try to pin as little as possible, like I've already said, but right now it's kind of at the point where if I don't pin it, the quilt is gonna start getting wonky. And this is the point where we can't do that. We need to keep it straight. We need to make sure all the edges line up to make sure that it's gonna be squared at the end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to line up the blocks. So here on the edges, I'm gonna line up the blocks. See these shorter pieces? These are the blocks. I'm gonna line those up, and then I'm gonna kind of peek through. Okay, let me grab this. I'm gonna kind of peek through and make sure that I'm lining up the sashings together, and then I pin them. And I'm gonna do it real loosely. I'm only gonna put about 1 pin in between each block because I think it'll line up just fine, and I don't want to add too many pins, and then I can run it through my machine that way. So I'm gonna be doing that, and we are very close to the end. This has been a really great quilt top to put together. The look is completely different, like I said. Let me know what you guys think of it. If you think it's too dark or too earthy. It kind of has a more, even though it looks darker and more vintagey, it does kind of have that modern look because those tones are really in style right now. The like tans and earthy tones are really in style. I've noticed that there's a lot of quilts being made right now with like browns and copper tones. So hey, it's kind of a happy accident, right? And that happens sometimes. Usually though, my quilts do come out as expected, so I'm really surprised by this one. But I am happy with it. And we are almost at the end. I mean, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seams to put the main piece together. All right, I'm almost at the end of this. It's finally starting to get cool here in Arizona. I'm so thankful. It was really hot this past summer. Super, super hot. And right now it's not even cold. It's like barely starting to get a little chilly in the air. And that's how it is in Arizona. We usually have a very mild winter, which is nice. I've never lived anywhere in the snow, so I have no idea what to even compare it with as far as extreme weathers. I grew up in San Diego, so there's no snowing there. And then we moved to Arizona. There's no snowing here. All right, this looks really good. It's coming out really nice. So you can really start seeing the grate here, and with these rust colors here, the rust and the yellow, it's really starting to pop there. See that grate? The sashing looks really good. I'm really liking this. It does look more like falling leaves, you know, because there's the little flowers in between the squares. So it does look like it's just kind of confetti just falling down because it's not very clear. They're not very clear squares, which I'm really happy with. I do like that. I knew that I wasn't gonna want a white sashing. I just didn't want anything that's contrasting. And I'm really happy I did this. All right, so now that I have the centerpiece, I'm gonna start sewing these rows onto this one. And you know, it's your choice how you choose to assemble. I know that the quilt pattern didn't have clear directions on that. It just says assemble as you feel comfortable. So I like to add them to the center. I like to add these outer pieces to the center, but you could also just do those 4 together and then these 4 together and then add the 3 pieces all at one time. I'm gonna go ahead and do as I said, just adding these here, and I think that's gonna be fine. And then I'm gonna go ahead and press everything at the end. I don't need to press them right now because I can still see a clear, I can still clearly line them up without having to press them. So that's a good thing. And leave all the heavy pressing for the end. Are you guys enjoying this video? I hope you are. Give me a thumbs up if you can. Even if you don't like it, give me a thumbs up. I need it. I need a thumbs up. I need some extra followers or subscribers. So go ahead and do that. I'm really enjoying this channel so far. I'm enjoying sewing with you guys, or for you guys. I hope you're joining along. But yeah, I need some subscribers. I need to bulk up my numbers. And liking these videos and subscribing, it's a free way to do that. No charge at all. And I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna finish sewing these up and we'll be back in a sec. Okay, here we are with the last stitch. I've got all the rows together. I've got all the sashing on, and this is the last piece of border that I'm gonna add here. And I'm really excited. This process has been really fun, very easy. For my first improv quilt, I would say it was a big success. It's nice to not have to measure every single piece whenever you're cutting things out, especially since cutting can be the most tedious and also the point where a lot of people mess up, make a lot of mistakes. So it's nice that you don't have to worry about that with this quilt. And the sashing came together very easy. They're all pretty much the same measurement. And I'm really happy with this quilt. I hope you guys try it out. I'm not sure I will be getting too far into improv. Who knows? You never know what's gonna happen. But I have seen some amazing quilts on Instagram where people are just piecing it together, just completely random, and it comes out in this huge masterful quilt. And I really admire that. I really, really do. But I do like the more structured quilts. I like there being more guidelines. Who knows? I also don't like really cutting up my fabric too much. I feel like there's a lot of waste with improv. Thankfully with this quilt there wasn't too much. And you know what, the scraps that I do have left over, I can make a really cute little decorative pillow with them. I can use them in other pieces. There was a recommendation on how many pieces I would need for the blocks in this quilt, and I know I didn't use a little stack of them. So maybe a decorative pillow will be in the works soon. But there's definitely enough scraps to make a whole new project with. Not as big as this one, of course. That would just be way too many scraps. Trying to be really careful with this last one. Oh, so what I did was whenever I was adding on the border of this quilt, I was able to then trim the sashing that was hanging off. You know how I left a little edge there? And now that the last pieces are on, I did trim that down and they came out pretty nice. So I'll show you that in a second. But I've been watching the hashtag feed on this quilt. It's called Stratus Sewalong, I believe. It's Stratus SAL. And so there's a lot of great quilts on there, a lot of great ideas, different colorways. I chose the more fall, autumn colors, but a lot of people are sewing with other colors and fabrics during this season. And so go check that out. It's really fun. Really great inspiration there. Okay. One thing I did not like during this process was that my blocks do keep pulling apart. And that's because they had been trimmed down. And so some of these vertical blocks have really been pulling apart throughout this whole process. So I keep having to adjust them. Even right now, I am kind of pushing them together because they're starting to pull apart and fray at the end. And so maybe a way to fix that is by piecing your Improv strips with a tighter, with a shorter length and a tighter seam. And I think that would have helped me if I had done that earlier. But well, this is the process. You kind of learn as you go, right? I would definitely consider making that 1/8 line along the edges though, because that would have helped me a lot. Okay, there it is, the last one. All right, I'm just gonna snip this off, and I will press this in a second, but I'm just gonna reveal it to you guys. The whole quilt. Look, I got a little extra at the end. That's going in the scrap bin. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys the entire quilt. It's looking awesome. And I will move this over just a little. This is a heavy machine. It's all metal. It's very heavy. All right, you guys ready? I think you're gonna like this. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. If it's your cup of tea or not, let me know. I'm very excited to hear your feedback. And, okay, I think this is the top. Oh, which way is the top? Okay, the yellow's on the bottom, that's for sure. Where are ya? Okay, here we are. You ready? You ready? Let me get on the chair. Here we are. It's got the border on. It's got the contrasting really light blocks up here. And then it goes into the more pinkies and the rusts. And then at the very bottom, it's that really pretty golden yellow. It really looks very, very autumn. Really, wow, I really like this. I did not expect to like it so much. What do you guys think? There is such a huge range of colors here in this quilt. There's a huge range of different types of designs. I've got moths. I've got little recipe strips. I've got a lot of art gallery fabrics, which were great because they're so easy to sew through. And even if you're hand quilting, art gallery fabrics is like so nice because you just stitch through it like butter. It's so nice. And then I've got some poppy cotton, some Hobby Lobby fabrics, which is the main sashing is from Hobby Lobby. And let me see, I really like it. So there, it's not a high contrast colorway. This fabric pull really did surprise me, but I like it and I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to be perfect in our living space, and for fall, maybe even use it for pictures, family pictures later on this year. That would be really nice. I'm really happy with it. Very unexpected, but I will be taking pictures of this. So I'm glad that the border is all sealed off with this long piece. You can see that. They're squared up pretty nice, and I'm gonna square this up whenever I am sandwiching it together to quilt. But let me see. See, the sashing has already been trimmed down, so it's all nice and clean on the inside edges. I'm really happy with this. I hope you guys will try out this pattern and that this video is helpful to you. Maybe a couple of the tricks or commentaries that I've had will be helpful to you. And just to review real quick, I'll go over what I would recommend, covering my face there, what I would recommend while making this pattern. So first, I would say cut your strips about 1 inch longer than what's recommended. That helped me. Or if you're super accurate with your stitching and it doesn't shift around too much, go with the recommended length, whatever you think is best. I definitely needed that extra inch of length on each strip. And then, let me see, what was the other thing? Shorter stitch while sewing those blocks together. It's gonna help hold the fabric together a little bit more whenever you're putting the sashing on and assembling the whole quilt. If I had laid out my sashing background fabric and then the other strips on top, I think I would have been able to get a better idea of what it was going to look like at the end and not be so surprised by this finished look. So do that, lay it out, see if you actually like the contrasting sashing, the background color, and if it all works together as you hope, and then you won't be so surprised like me. And then what else? I kept my horizontal sashing all in one piece until I sewed it on. That was helpful to me. I have these perfectly straight edges here, you can see, and there were none shifting. It's all lined up really nicely. You can see there, and those blocks. That was helpful to me. I like to leave my sashing all in one piece. I opened my seams, I pressed them open. That is everything that I did with this quilt, and I hope it was helpful to you. I hope if you try this, you'll let me know in the comments if you found any of those tips helpful to you, and that you'll go check out the hashtag of the quilt pattern on Instagram. It is Stratus Quilt. It is by Homemade Emily Jane. Check out her website. I was not compensated for this quilt pattern review. I just decided to do it since I was already sewing up the quilts this season, and I did purchase it myself. I purchased all the fabric, the pattern, everything myself. So that's just little information for you. And I am going to be adding the tools that I used in my Amazon storefront if you want to check that out. I hope you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will be back with more reviews and sewing tips and more videos. So I'll see you next time.